up, y'all? Welcome back to another Golden Record track breakdown, and today we are talking about the 14th track off of the album, Solar Surfer. Now, this is the third track to have started as a Freestyle Friday and end up in a more produced state for the album, but it is also, apart from $3 Wells, the only other track on the album to feature my vocals. Now, they're still affected because, as we talked about in $3 Wells, this is an album about humanity, and I didn't want to put myself at the center of that story. But as I said as well, I'm also hugely influenced by Tyler, the Creator, and all of his production style, and he does that a lot with the vocals, but also the Houston in me is hugely affected by that chopped and screwed style. And in that chopped and screwed music, as you know, or if you don't, which you should, load vocals are a big part of that. And so that's in our DNA, it's a part of me, and so it's a bit of a love letter to both of those things. But this track really is just like a sigh of relief. It's a breath of fresh air. It's going for a walk at that perfect time of year when outside is just right for you. Coming right out of Foo's Flower Shop, which is sort of the moment of peace that you get after happiness. This is kind of like the momentum you can get when you have happiness under your wings, you know? So let's go ahead and dive into Ableton and we'll see what's happening inside of this thing. So diving into Ableton, you can see pretty quickly that there aren't too many different components that make up this track. And that goes hand in hand with the Freestyle Friday attitude, you know? The whole idea of that was not to overcomplicate the music making process for ourselves, and then coupled with the attitude of this song, you know, that go with the flow nature, that laissez-faire attitude, you know? Keeping it simple was very much the key to making this track effective. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is that we have these 5 tracks in here that we have grouped together in this thing called Drum Room. Now, I've had this on other tracks. I may have talked about it. May have been called Kick Room or something similar, but it's got all of these are side chained to our drum section, and it just creates a bit more room in the mix. That's what a side chain does, essentially. Quick and dirty explanation. But we only have a little bit of the signal on here of this dry wet, and if you don't know what the dry wet, if that's confusing to you, think about it like a chicken wing. You've got a fried chicken wing. It's dry. There's no sauce on it. There's not a lot of flavor. Then you put the sauce on it. Now it's wet. See? So think about your signal like that. You've got your dry signal. There's, it's just sort of the base signal. You haven't done anything to it yet. And the higher percentage of that wet scale, that means the more the effect has been applied. So sometimes you don't need a whole lot. A little can go a long way. And so this is just about 17% for an effective sidechain, just to create, just a bit more room for the drums in the mix. So let's talk about these different components. The first is our main loop, just a nice synth loop. Let's go ahead and listen to it. It's a very simple little melody. It just repeats itself, but it's bright, it's fun, it's inviting. It helps set that atmosphere. Then we introduce our keys shortly after, and the keys really fill the void of sort of, it gives you that warmth, that sunny day warmth. If the whole track is called Solar Surfer, we got to have some warmth, some sun in there. So that's what these keys provide, and go ahead and listen to them. Assuming my computer will behave. But yeah, they just have this nice quality to them. It makes me feel like I can feel the warmth of the sun. I've got the window open, the breeze is coming in, and just that warmth hits you in just the right way. Yeah, it's great. I love the way those keys sound. Nothing too complicated going on there. A little compressor and some EQ. Then we have these pads. These pads come in near the end of the track. And you can listen to them. They're pretty happy. That's why I've got this nice bright yellow on them. And they've just got this really nice... Oh, yeah, it's just, it's so bright and shiny. You can see like the glistening of the sun in the water, the breeze in your hair. That's what this pad provides. And it's just delightful. You can see that we've got, quite a bit of effects on it. We've got, some EQ, a fair amount of that. The RC20 is doing some heavy lifting in here. And then the delay as well. You'll hear when I hit pause that it all kind of trails off momentarily. Hear that? Have and that delay when mixed in, because the pad's basically just a chord progression, it just creates this nice blanket of sound to drench over that final section. Then we bring in our lead, and when we first introduce our lead, we have this nice little melody that goes with it. And this is where a lot of the kind of spaciness in this track comes from. You know, we've talked about that spaciness needing to be in every track to sort of fit that world of the golden record. There's always something in there. And so that's what it's doing. It does go on to an arpeggiated section here at the end. We have 2 different arpeggiated sections. Just adds some nice movement in the track, you know, nice little bits in there. And you can see, too, that there are times where, as we have these shifts, the pad introduces and the arpeggio switches up. We also take out our main loop and our keys for some added oomph. And then we have this sample texture. This is just a texture that I pulled. It was a sample in my library, and I liked the way it sounded. It was in the right key, and it adds a nice movement to the track. There's a nice bounce to it, you know? It gives you some of that head bobbing kind of vibe. A little, you know, if we're on the ocean, you know, it's that boat, you know, hitting the waves as you're soaring through it all. That idea, you know, of just, you know, Solar Surfer. I think it was Treasure Planet, I think. Treasure Planet or Titan AE. I'm pretty sure it's Treasure Planet, where he's like surfing on that thing and is like flying through space. I just thought it was such a cool imagery. So yeah, that's sort of the idea of the track, a little hidden detail in there. But this texture adds a nice, you know, kind of bounce to it. So yeah, that's what's all inside of there. So let's go ahead and move into our bass. Now our bass is some fun bit. It's comprised of 2 different elements. We got our big boy, which is doing a lot of the big sonic movement of the bass, and then we have this breathy section. So we'll listen to it, the big boy bass first, and just sort of check out what it's doing. Big wubby thing. And we got the DS10 drum shaper on there, adding some big attack on it. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, even though this is a bass section and not a drum, you don't necessarily have to be stuck using, you know, this just because a plugin says drums. Don't only think you can use it on your drums. Put it on anything, you know, experiment. If it sounds good, it sounds good. There's no rules to this shit, regardless of what people will tell you. So yeah, then we've got our breathy section. You kind of hear it's kind of like a pad for the bass, which just adds some nice room, some sonic textures in there in our higher frequencies, and adds some width to it all. When you listen to it all together, fills in some of the gaps too in the bass's initial wub. So then we move on into our drums, and our drums are real simple. We've got our drum break, with many a drum break on this album. We've got its little kit loop that we have in here that is from Cymatics, and this percussion loop also from Cymatics in here. So let's go ahead and just sort of listen to these. You can hear this initial bounces. Yeah, it's nice. Cymatics got some good drum loops. And then we've got this break. I love the way this drum break sounds. And this is kind of that's the main drum throughout the entirety of the track. That's the sort of big inspirational drum that comes crashing through the whole thing. Then we have this nice percussive loop in here too. I love the way this little percussive section sounds. It just adds, again, you know, it's just a little extra movement, a little extra claps and things like that. You can hear it all together. And these two here, like, differently, they can create a different vibe, you know, just sort of changing up the thing, even though it's the same percussive loop. We just have a different drum break on it, essentially. So those are our drum section, and like I said, nothing too complicated in there. We have the Diablo plugin on it, and then some EQ. And then we move into our guitar. Now, our guitar is drenched in effects. A compressor, EQ, we've got our ozone on there, we've got a bit of saturation, a little more EQ, all just to sort of create this very lush sound. I love the way the guitar turned out. Let's just listen to it. And again, it adds movement. There's a nice progression in there, sort of arpeggio a little bit to match our leads doing later in the track. It's just really nice. We have it a bit later, louder later in the track as well. And it's basically the same melody and everything. It just comes back in. And then the final element is our vocals. Now the vocals is, again, it's just me, pitch shifted down. Let's see if it's 3 semitones. So we just pitch shifted down 3 semitones, drenched it in some EQ. We've got, some reverb rather. We've got the RC20 on the vocals as well, and we'll just solo this vocal on its own and hear what it sounds like.
Pink in the sky caught my wandering eye, and the wind through the leaves is like a heavenly sigh as I get lost in the breeze like a young butterfly. It's the moments like these where everything is alright.
You know, and the track's a little more poetry style as far as like my normal writing, and that's because I wanted to match sort of more of the vibe of the rest of the album, as it were. And it's just that one little section, you know, it's a little mini verse in here that kind of helps. I treated it more so as an instrument as opposed to a vocal section entirely. And then that is everything that makes up our track. You bring it all together and you get something that sounds like
Pink
this.
in the sky caught my wandering eye, and the wind through the leaves is like a heavenly sigh as I get lost in the breeze like a young butterfly. It's the moments like these where everything is alright.
And that's it all together. We get to our nice outro where everything comes together, all of our little bits. We bring in this nice pad, the sample texture, the bass goes away even, you know, we're just kind of riding on the happiness, the sort of the feeling of moving and grooving that this song gives you. Just a little bit of that melody. So that was Solar Surfer, just a nice breath of fresh air at the end of the album, you know. It's just kind of like opening up the window and letting the breeze come in and take you away. All right, y'all, we got one more of these left, so join me here tomorrow as we break down Transmissions, the final track off of the Golden Record. And big news, we have officially broken 6,000 streams in 3 weeks, which is a crazy accomplishment. So thank you all so much for the support. I could not do this without you. I cannot wait to see where it's at in another 3 weeks. But until then, keep it locked in here for more, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.
Pink in the sky caught my wandering eye, and the wind through the leaves is like a heavenly sigh as I get lost in the breeze like a young butterfly. It's the moments like these where everything is alright. It's the moments like these where I can finally thrive. Feel the beat in my veins start to pulse with pride, and the warmth from the sun is all I